Hello, my friend. So if you're viewing this video, you're entering a field of synchronicity in your life. What I'm going to share with you in this video is what synchronicity is, how it can impact your life, and I'm also going to share a bit of an opportunity to play a synchronicity game with yourself and with others in this comment field. Because you see, every single one of us has the ability to participate, to engage with synchronicity. But one of the first steps is being aware of it and then being aware of how you can interact with it in your lives. So let's start by defining what synchronicity is. And we're going to give it a loose definition just for the sake of understanding it so we can communicate about it here. An important thing to understand is definitions in general. They can limit the scope of something we're looking at. It's not right or wrong, good or bad. It's just what happens. So understand that as I'm defining synchronicity, there may be a lot more to it than the words I'm using to describe it. And such is the case for many expanded concepts out there. Now, synchronicity I'm going to describe as auspicious and unique circumstances, chance encounters, meetings, meetups, occurrences that happen, that seem improbable or unlikely, and yet on some level line up in a way that is very obvious to the viewer. In another way of saying this, a synchronicity is an event that seems perfectly coordinated, and yet if you had attempted to coordinate it from your mind, right? If you had attempted to call or plan it or coordinate it, it would have been either a very challenging or potentially seemingly impossible thing to line up. So I'll give a few examples of what a synchronicity could look like so that maybe you could identify, you've probably experienced some synchronicities in your life, whether you've been aware of them or not. So one example of a synchronicity, this is a very simple one, is you're thinking about someone. They just pop into your mind. And at that exact moment, you look over and you see a sign or you see something that has their name in it. And you look down at your phone, and at that exact moment, they're either texting you or calling you. Okay? So before you looked at anything, you thought of them. They just popped up in your head. You saw their name. You saw them on the phone. This is an example of a synchronicity. You might think to yourself, whoa, that's weird. I was just thinking about you, right? You answer the phone. Another synchronicity might be something like, an example would be perhaps a widowed wife who had gotten certain flowers, maybe lilies, right, from her husband, and her husband had died years and years prior, and maybe on a particular day she was just feeling really sad, missing her husband, and then a neighbor at that moment knocks on the door and says, hey, I just picked all these lilies from my garden. I thought they'd look so pretty, and I thought I should give some to you, and hands her a big bouquet of lilies. And the synchronicity of that being that at that very moment she was longing for missing her husband, and then suddenly, out of seemingly nowhere, the neighbor comes and hands her the exact kind of lilies the husband used to get. And these are things that sometimes people just chalk up to coincidence or to luck or random occurrence. But the more you observe within your life the occurrence of synchronicities, the more they seem to pop up. And it's not necessarily like they weren't there before or, suddenly more happening. Although it could be, right? There's some perspectives in quantum physics that something observed shifts. But I would say that as you bring something into consciousness, right, in your mind's eye, as you've decided to focus on something, it subconsciously gets highlighted in your reality. This is the phenomenon we describe, when you start thinking, okay, I'm going to think about red cars, and then everywhere you go, red cars pop out to you if they didn't before. I know I used to do this with blue cars, because there was this point where I'm like, I'm going to get an electric blue car, and then from that point on, it was like suddenly the road was filled with electric blue cars. And I was certain that I just hadn't seen that many before. But after that point, there were just so many electric blue cars. There was a certain point where I'm like, I feel like I got my fill of electric blue cars because they're just everywhere. And in a similar way, synchronicities could also be about, let's say you decide there's a certain animal. Some people who are on this channel may relate this way. You might have a certain animal or a certain number you see everywhere, and you find that at certain points, if you're thinking of a question, you're asking to be guided, maybe suddenly that animal or that number shows up, or something that has meaning to you shows up, right? So these are all expressions of synchronicity. These things lining up that seem to respond to the promptings of what might be our innermost self, our innermost thoughts that happen at that very moment. I've had it happen where I was thinking of someone I had deeply missed, and I was in the store, and suddenly at that exact moment, a song that I related to them came on. It was very touching, just like at that moment. I think it had been very weird because it was almost as though whatever had been playing before just stopped, and then the new song came on. So how then can synchronicities be of assistance to us, right? Because I've shared a few examples here, but perhaps it's still like, well, that sounds interesting, but why would that matter to me? Well, I see synchronicities as communication between us and ourselves beyond time and space. Synchronicities are one of the ways we can communicate with our deeper selves, our subconscious and our superconscious selves in the present moment. They can act as milestones, waypoints, guideposts that are helping us receive confirmation. Indeed, you are on a correct path, or hey, you could go this way, but why not go this way? And as we operate with synchronicities, as we trust the synchronicities along with our intuition and our inner discernment, then we can find ourselves in what I have called before, living a mythical life. Now, a mythical life is going to be so uniquely defined for each person. And I like saying a mythical life because in my own mind, in my own psyche, it's a deeply satisfying life. It's, for me, only I can know for sure perhaps what that satisfaction looks like. But I know in my own life, I enjoy deeply a lot of flavors, variety in life. I enjoy times of being in peace and in comfort, but then I enjoy times of being on adventure and doing fascinating things. For example, I travel a lot, but then when I'm not traveling, I love just hermiting, I sometimes call it, amongst the trees where I live. And for me, these are all the elements of living my mythical life. It's something that I am, while I may have certain levels of concept for it, right? I get ideas and inspirations of things I might like to do. For example, some of the things I'm calling into my life include creating more artifacts. And I've recently connected with a silversmith who's shown excitement to forge things with me. These things I also consider synchronicities. I get ideas, I feel an inspiration in my heart, and then I'm easily connected with the right person or the right place or something like this. And it's easeful, all right? This is connecting back to what we described in flow-based living. The key here is that I'm no longer asking how it happens. I am connecting to the inspirations and the insights. I am listening to my inner guidance and taking discernment on the steps to take every day. I combine that in my own life with certain routines that are in support of both my structure and my joyful, creative chaos goblin time, which I like to call it, scientifically, of course. Because here's the thing. For myself, I have found that consistency allows me to not only observe patterns that I can shift and change, but it gives me the opportunity to work in what we might almost call the non-consistency. It can be seen as a bit of a paradox. And I'll tell you that most of the truest truths I have experienced in life are rooted right smack in the center of a paradox. We're having an individual experience. We're having a collective experience, yes. This is why I have not found it particularly interesting or constructive to argue with anyone's view of reality. It's like the elephant conundrum. The elephant's made of rope. The elephant's made of trunks. The elephant is just a huge sheet. Yes. The elephant is all these things. Yes. When someone shares with me that they may have differing views than me, I go, excellent. You understand what you're about. And in all of our lives, I'm sharing this with you because as you connect to the field of synchronicity, you may come up to the inner critic. You may experience the part of you that goes, is this real? This isn't real. Are you sure? What is? This is where your discernment comes in, and developing conversation and relationship with yourself is important. And this is why a lot of people, when you're starting to live your mythical life, you start with a lot of the foundational things. I have a lot of love for concepts like manifestation and creating the things you want, but it can be really easy to approach the level of creation and manifestation from a place of attempting to bypass experiencing what is truly nourishing for your being. And I say that as someone who has in the past attempted to use these kinds of creations to unconsciously avoid feeling uncomfortable feelings, because there was a time that I was not aware of how to regulate in my body. And so I got really, really good at magic stuff. But what really helped me, at least at this juncture in my life, was coming back to places of, I want to say almost grounding and practicality, so that as I approach this life with a mix of, you could say almost practicalness and consistency and all these other things, I could more effectively attune to the parts of ourselves that we might label as magic or mystic, or the things that seem to produce miracles, or the things that seem to land in the field of synchronicity. One of the things that I have learned very powerfully in my life, and I've, called in and experienced some really wondrous things, is we don't need to summon a huge, complicated orb ball of light if you have a flashlight or match in your hand. Sometimes if you have a practical, simple, straightforward solution for something, start with that. Check your joy. But we can actually make things real simple. I like to call it the Gandalf way, at least the Gandalf in maybe the Hobbit or some of the Lord of the Rings, where we know he's a very powerful magi. The amount of times he actually uses magic for big things seems to be at these very precise moments, right? At the most important, most needed moments, and otherwise, for the most part, just walks, does normal things, maybe offers some advice. And in this way, synchronicity, living a mythical life, these kinds of videos are inviting you to be really cognizant of how powerful you are. I'm going to take a moment to say, you're watching at this point in the video, I will reflect to you, you are a very empowered being, very powerful being. And I can understand it may not always feel that way, and you may even be in a place and time where it doesn't feel that way, and you're going like, yeah. You are a very powerful being, very empowered being. And there's a lot of self-work that you have done to come to this place. And, I invite you to take a moment to really congratulate yourself for that. And this is one of the things that we sometimes do as high level, I'm going to identify it as like high level achievers, in some areas of our life. We sometimes, just kind of race past each goalpost. So thank you for coming here and now to this point, for reminding yourself of the power of the field of synchronicity, for choosing to engage it at a level that is more conscious for yourself, for being able to now identify and see synchronicities as they occur in your life with more clarity and precision, for being able to act upon them in a resonant way. So this is what you have chosen on some level, and I celebrate you for that. And so what I invite you to do, if it feels good to you, if this feels interesting, if you've enjoyed this video, is to share a comment. Share a comment first at this point, right? After watching the video, whatever you like. It could be what your thoughts are on synchronicity. It could be just a simple, here I am, or thank you, or what have you. Or perhaps you want to share something that pops into your mind right now, because what we're about to do is you're not only playing a game of synchronicity with yourself, but all of us watching this video are in a game of synchronicity together. What we put in the comments over the next few days, and even over the next few weeks, may in turn end up being a synchronicity for someone else. So what I'm going to say is, if you feel inspired to share something in the comments, whatever it is, it may seem unrelated, please feel free to do so. If you've gotten this far and you feel inspired to share something in the comments, please feel invited to do so. Because you never know who's going to look at that and it's going to be a synchronicity for them, and there is something about to emerge here. Now, if this sounds really fun to you, you want to take it some steps further, a reminder that very shortly the next synchronicity amplifying container, it's a workshop that I hold, will also be starting. I have a link in the description if you are interested in joining, getting more information. This is a more focused, and even more focused, amplified experience. So if it feels joyful to you, you can check that out. And if this was of help to you, please do go ahead, like, comment, share. I always enjoy interacting with the comments and interacting with all of us. And as always, it's been such a joy to connect with you, and I look forward to our next connection. Thank you for being. You really are rocking it.